The United States has reinstated its naval blockade on Iran. It says that it's in response to attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. The decision comes less than a month after the two countries signed a Memorandum of Understanding pledging to halt military action and lift restrictions on shipping in the waterway. At the same time, President Donald Trump has walked back his announcement that the US would charge a 20% fee on all cargo in the strait. He says that Washington agreed to trade and investment deals with Gulf states as compensation for safeguarding the waterway. Well, the US has attacked Iran for the fourth consecutive night. US Central Command says it hit dozens of Iranian military sites. An Iranian official says that a wheat storage silo was one of the targets. And Iran has launched retaliatory strikes across the region. Kuwait, Bahrain and Jordan sounded air raid sirens and intercepted missiles overnight. Speaking to Fox News, President Trump says that Washington remains in contact with Tehran, but threatened to escalate attacks.
When was the last time you spoke with an Iranian official?
Well, not me, but let's say my representatives. I have spoken to them, but my representatives over the course of well, actually, an hour ago.
And what message was delivered?
They want to make a deal, but every time they make a deal, they break it. They don't want to die. People don't want to die. Yeah, about an hour ago.
And what message was delivered?
You better make a deal. You're not going to have anybody left. We're being very careful with the civilian population, as you know, but I said, you better make a deal. You're not going to have anything left.
In a moment, we'll speak to Al Jazeera's Aksel Zaimovic, who's here in Doha for the Gulf reaction. But first, let's join Al Jazeera's Resul Serdar, who's in Iran's capital, Tehran. Resul, how is this US naval blockade likely to affect Iran? What's been the response there?
Well, to talk about the likely effect of the U.S. blockade over Iran, I think we have a solid experience of the past, Adrian. Remember, on April 13, just 5 days after the ceasefire was announced, the United States imposed a blockade over Iran, and it lasted nearly for 2 months, ended on June 17, the day that Memorandum of Understanding was signed. And back then I was in Iran. And so we have seen the immediate effect of that blockade over the economy on the daily life in Iran. So the prices of the goods were skyrocketing. The inflation in some basics like cooking oil more than 300%, and it triggered a huge unemployment in the country. So that was imminent. That was there, evident and extremely visible. So the reason for that, because more than 80% of Iran's trade is going through the Strait of Hormuz or through the southern ports of the country. And now that the United States, for the second time, is imposing that blockade, that means depriving Iran from 80% of its trade capacity.
So let's bring in Aksel in Doha. Just bring us up to date, Aksel, on the latest Iranian attacks across the Gulf, including on shipping in the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, that's right. We got a confirmation from authorities in Kuwait. They say they intercepted dozens of drones along with several cruise missiles and one ballistic missile. We also understand that there are a number of military personnel that were injured in those attacks, but also that one of the facilities that was targeted, that a fire broke out at one of the premises over there. And also search operation still continues for those missing after 2 UAE tankers were targeted on Monday night. We got official confirmations from officials there that's saying that 2 crew members were killed in those attacks, but also we understand that a Norwegian vessel was also targeted in the latest Iranian retaliatory attack.
Aksel, the volume of traffic going through the strait has dropped considerably. How are Gulf countries reacting to all of this?
Well, there's a lot of concerns among many here in the region. They believe that the conflict itself is not confined only to the main actors, that's the United States and Iran, and they fear they are being dragged into this conflict despite the fact denying saying they don't want to be part of this war. But there's a lot of condemnation coming from many leaders here. We hear from Qatar's foreign ministry. They condemn the latest attacks, and they also express solidarity with Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan. But also similar statements coming from different Gulf capitals here. But also there's this economic aspect to be worried about, because this is the Strait of Hormuz. This is one of the busiest energy corridors here, and every time there's an attack, it also there's a growing concern that there's going to be disruption in supplies, and that's something that's feeding into higher oil prices as well. And if this disruption continues, there's a fear that the consequences, wider consequences, will be felt not just here in the region but also across the world.
Resul, we heard President Trump saying a few moments ago that lines of communication are still open. What are the Iranians saying about where diplomacy is right now?
Well, Iranians also saying that the door for the diplomacy is open. However, here the main problem is the mistrust. Remember, just since the Islamic Revolution in 1979 on, that mistrust has grown further and further between the two parties. While they were negotiating, so the countries came under attack twice. And the recent Memorandum of Understanding that was signed, and still now we have another low-intensity war. So for Iranians, they first saying that the United States is not committed to what it's promising. So the Memorandum of Understanding was supposed to be the base, to be the foundation of the negotiations. And it's all about the ceasefire, cessation of hostilities, lifting American blockade over Iran, and the lifting the sanctions and not imposing new sanctions and so on. But now, practically, when we look at the developments on the field, so there is a low-intensity war, the sanctions are back, new sanctions are imposed, there is a blockade again. So it is extremely difficult now for the parties to come to a negotiating table, and because there is no base anymore. So Iranians are saying the condition for a diplomatic engagement is commitment for the commitment. If Americans commit to what they promised, if Americans commit to the articles of the Memorandum of Understanding, if they implement the articles, the clauses of the Memorandum of Understanding, they are open to re-engage diplomatically.
Al Jazeera's Resul Serdar in Tehran and Aksel Zaimovic in Doha. Many thanks to you both.